There is no point in posting a video, for example, if I felt I had nothing to contribute. And we don't actually always know where our contribution comes from, what it is that creates, I suppose, significance. And what you see behind me are my sculpture paintings. What you see behind me are sculpture paintings that are in fact perfect symmetries to begin with. However, after I get through with them, there is a slight alteration in what appears to be, or what used to be, a symmetry. You can sort of pick it up in some of them. You can pick it up there. This one, obviously, it's a floor piece or a table piece or something. It's a sculptural element that is more an element of sculpture than this, which might be more of a painting. Anyway, I'm putting them up because I think they're a contribution in the way I'm thinking with this problem I'm ruminating on. And I'm ruminating on pursuits of futility. And futility would be for me something where I make something that really is not a contribution in some way or other. And there is no point in being esoteric about this in the way this UG Krishnamurti, for example, don't do anything. I appreciate actually this angry philosopher, this Indian philosopher who was really pissed off with everything and anything. I can identify with having an attitude that that is so contrarian, that makes you feel nothing that has ever been said or produced is of value to me. That sort of was his philosophy. Now, he ended in a very difficult frame of mind as far as I could tell. He was pissed off with anything and everyone, and he was looking for a fight, I think, at every step. He was always, and there is nothing wrong with that. I mean, you don't want to hurt anybody, but it kind of becomes a pursuit of futility. It's not fertility, it's a pursuit of futility. Now, the thought that I had today as I'm working on my sculpt paintings, in my last video on AI is not intelligent, and I posted it and I titled it the way I did because I have a sense, I am not definitive on technicalities. Let's say there is expertise that presents itself to us that we understand through critical thinking and analysis and learning. I mean, imagine writing the solo cello pieces that Bach wrote for solo cello, the magnificent collection of 6 suites for cello that are so phenomenal, not because they represent an intelligence, but they represent something that utilizes, obviously, what we refer to as intelligence, but it indicates something a lot more encompassing, I suppose, a wisdom of some sort. And a person who is capable, like Bach, of producing music of on such an exquisite level, and there are people that have accomplished this on many different scales. Bach stands out in the sense that he, to me anyway, there was a simplicity in the way he expressed himself that was very poignant and direct. I think it teaches me something. I feel, besides the just pure enjoyment, it teaches me something. And I think my commentary today, I don't know how long this is going to be, but it's in reference to intelligence. And what I suspect in our progression as human beings, as brothers and sisters in what I believe to be a fight for our survival now, for this consciousness that is represented by our bags of blood, the bags of blood that we are. What is this representation of consciousness, and does it matter? Does it matter? Does it matter to be human? Does it matter to be who we are, who you are, who each person is? Does it matter? Does it matter to make something that represents this expression of consciousness, the complexity of it, and is it intelligent? Or is its primary purpose to represent intelligence? This was my comment on the last video I did. AI is not intelligent. I'm going to get to this. I have to be mindful in this progression. I make this up because I have impulses when I work. I produce work based on impulses that I have no clue where they come from. I can retrace my steps, but I really have no clue where the impulse comes from. And in these particular pieces, I took on the idea of the mandala, a representation of a high level of order within the cosmos as we perceive it, and I'm dismantling it because we need to dismantle something that, if it is of value to us, it can last through the scrutiny of our most severe abuses, I suppose. I am committing acts of severe abuse against holy symbols or representations that reflect intelligence, that I am entirely opposed to from the point of view that where we are going, where we have come from and where we are going, is continuously being referred to as intelligent. And I really object to this idea that it's intelligent, because if it brings destruction and the threat against the very nature of all bags of blood and all other forms of life, who basically exist in some sort of container with fluids in it. Most life are containers with fluid in it. They're all bags of blood. All life are bags of blood. And I'm not talking about inanimate objects like rocks. I mean, there's a level of fluid and water content, I suppose. But we as sentient existences rely on this fluid part in us, contained fluid, to operate in some sort of balance. And my bag of blood is very resistant to the idea of something being in a state of perfection through what we understand to be the mind as intellect. I resist the idea that intellect, or AI, is actually intelligent. In fact, AI is a deviation, and there are people who inadvertently are promoting AI, even though they feel themselves to be opposed to where AI is going. But the very idea of being connected to this concept that we are somehow reliant on this intelligence is a flawed idea. I look for discrepancies. When I reflect on something, I seem to get some kind of satisfaction out of reflecting on the opposite, in a sense. It's kind of like, is that a palindrome? It's like you create one and you have the opposite on the other, but there's a symmetry again. And I'm not promoting the idea of symmetry in the work, as you can see, although it's based on a symmetry. The idea of the golden rule, this kind of beautiful helix, this repetition, this feeling of a shell that curls in a spiral. The idea that we attach ourselves to formations that appear to be universal, cosmic, in what we understand to be space, and people have commented on this to way back when, and they create structures around it, and I resist it, which is why I resist the idea that anything we're given by what I call the white coats is all suspect. And I see them as pursuits of futility. And to raise, are you following me in this? I'm rambling here because this is how I think and reflect before I proceed to express myself in the work that I'm making. And other artists who feel, I suppose, who vibrate on this level of resistance and contrarian attitudes, it's actually a very good platform to proceed from, because you're likely to be original as you oppose something rather than to go along with something. I think this is the kind of premise that my teachers, the ones that I like, encouraged and reinforced in you. So let me get to this. Artificial intelligence is not intelligent. That is not to say we utilize aspects of our being. There is an entire range. There is an entire range of us being us. And this includes individuality. This includes people who have extraordinary gifts and people who appear to be just kind of like bumping along. But you never know what it is you're going to learn from whom. It's not essentially that if you read a brilliant writer or a fabulous book that you're going to learn something. You may actually learn a lot more from your neighbor who is planting crops in the fields and having a very simple life. It's actually something for you and me to progress in our own development. We never really know where that inspiration or that insight or that understanding comes from. So to focus what I say linear thinking is the way that will bring us the resolution that we are looking for. And I want to say that anger is necessarily predicated on demanding a resolution. It's not something that exists on its own, like just to be angry is good enough. No, there needs to be some sense of a resolution to this, because if you're trapped in the anger, if I'm trapped in the anger, there is no escape from this feeling. It's quite an extraordinary phenomenon, because we seem to get trapped in certain emotions and feelings. And they can I mean, what is it that we're habitually attracted to is the thing that we need to break. So if we're continuously angry, we need to find a resolution. Or if we're continuously eating bacon and eggs in the morning, you've got to find some other way of sustaining yourself, because it's going to kill you. Anything you do too much over and over, I'm not really sure, except for a few things that reflect our highest parts. I'll come to this. You know what it's going to be, because I talk about this all the time. The idea that there is something much more evolved and high within us that actually can be repeated without being detrimental. So you want to get to that point that reflects this. What is that? That kind of wisdom, that higher part. And intelligence is not the holy grail of this experience. And to suggest that the AI, even, I was listening to a YouTuber called Cati. He said C-A-T-I. I thought it was Cati. Cati is actually an affliction. It's where one of the chromosomes isn't properly formed, and it creates a dysfunction in the way we work as human beings. There are different symptoms to this, but I thought Cati has a dysfunction because he is quite fascinating in his analysis of the Kabbalah through a numerical understanding. And I really appreciate this, because I actually have a sense that if you even think in terms of music like Bach, there is an equation or a mathematical quality that people have understood. But mathematics is not the source. Mathematics is a representation that can be used to explain something, but it's not the source. So the numbers that Cati goes into is a revelation from the point of view that it tells us something is happening that we may not be aware of, but to focus on it as the to give us understanding of it, we would be in error. I mean, I'm listening to it and I'm gaining something from it, but it's in error in the sense that it still promotes the idea of this encompassing intelligence that he resists, actually. He talks about the AI as a subversive element within our evolution development, that something was created around us, that it exists actually as a phenomenon outside of what we understand. I got to get this. I'm going to come back to this. I'm back. I'm back. I actually had to leave. I'm back. It's the next day, but I'm going to continue on my reflections. I'm going to continue and finish this off that I started on intelligence. The idea of what it means to be intelligent and how it is represented in AI. And I just want to finish off on the Cati, which I appreciate his insights. He just went through a dissertation on the Michelle Obama and Barack Obama portraits by a couple of artists. One, Kehinde Wiley, I think is one of them. I actually participated in, I was down in New York in an auction that he was also, I don't think he showed up at the auction. Artists usually don't show up at the auction. I did go, and one of my paintings sold at auction in New York, and his painting sold big time in New York, and he became the rising star. Kehinde Wiley, check him out. And I always called him the artist of nice. He is like super nice, like a super nice painter. He's like really nice. So they chose him to paint Barack Obama. And I want to just give a heads up to a YouTuber called McGurk, who has just published a video on the idea of the machine learning and intelligence. I'm going to put a link to his video. I really liked his thought process in this. But the Cati thing, I just brought up because he raises some interesting issue in terms of recognizing where the subversion may be manifesting itself in events and what they call false flag events, or the numbers associated with events, school shootings, the 9/11, the Kennedy murder. All those events have numerical signatures which he identifies, which is fabulous. I think it's brilliant. I'm going to attach a video on the Obama portraits as well, because it's worth looking at. I'm going to wrap up what I consider my thoughts on intelligence and what it is that makes something intelligent or not. And the idea of computing or coming up with incredible nanosecond computing speeds and all this, the idea of intelligence, and this is my position from my own understanding of my own life, and the words we use to explain things that happen to us are in themselves quite extraordinary and unique when you think about language, that I can stand here and speak words to you, the ability to communicate, and all creatures alive on this planet have their way of communicating and transferring what is, I don't know what that is. It may not be to us a thought, because we have no way of knowing what a dolphin or a whale is experiencing in their sounds, in their communication. It's a mystery to us. We can extrapolate by observing, but we don't really know. What we do know, however, is what that means to you and me, and what does it mean to be intelligent. And now I'm going to invoke what I said in the video just before this. I'm going to invoke something that is always missed, in the sense that we can just detach ourselves from an experience and sort of put it on a shelf and call it something, and just sort of remove ourselves. How can I explain it? Okay, the idea of intelligence as being a kind of detached aspect of our existence is ridiculous. Intelligence suggests to me something that elevates my existence, my nature, from something else, like I don't know, whatever, like this phone thing here is, you know, well, I mean, it has a certain amount of memory and computing skills in it. There are computer chips in it. But what makes my intelligence different from what is understood to be AI intelligence, which I say is not intelligent, because it doesn't have an attachment. And the attachment that I'm talking about is, again, to the mystery. What is it that creates a sense of self within this experience if it's not our attachment to something that makes us feel us. I mean, you can't feel you unless you compare yourself in a certain way to something else. It's literally like a feeling, a sense of being part of something. Now, for me, the invocation of intelligence without this attachment is not intelligent. That's basically what I'm coming to. And what is that part in ourselves that we consider to be a higher part of ourselves if it's not this attachment to something which is really fundamentally unknown to us in what we consider to be our brains, our thought, our mind, even to some extent our spirit. We are contained in something we have no explanation for, and intelligence often is used to explain away something the way we understand this computer machine intelligence, which fundamentally is attempting, I believe, attempting to displace our connection using intelligence, the idea of intelligence, with this connection we have to the mystery that every creature experiences. So when I say AI is not intelligent, what I'm saying is, without the connection to what I'm talking about in terms of understanding innately being part of something, if that is not in the game here, in the exchange, in the understanding, it's not intelligent. Now, you could argue with me and say, yes, if, can a computer ultimately tie its shoelace if it has a shoelace? And it can be taught to tie its shoelace. Is it intelligent? I would say it can learn something like Hank McGurk talks about, which is a really interesting sort of reflection. He has great reflections on this whole idea of learning. But is it intelligent in the sense that you and I experience intelligence and feel connected to something that is of a higher self? Now I'm going to introduce again something, and I hope I've made this clear in this, the concept that intelligence without attachment is not intelligent. And I think this is what I refer to when I say AI is not intelligent. So what you can basically end up with is a dystopian, dysfunctional existence, which is actually happening in the circumstance when people detach themselves, like Mengele at the camps. He was an intelligent person who is actually using his intelligence to create suffering, dysfunction, mayhem, which ultimately will separate us from, or him, from this experience of the mystery, because it is not attached. He can detach himself. And is it intelligent? On a certain level, you can, yeah, it's intelligent. The guy was highly intelligent, apparently. But for me, he is the lowest grunt existing in this experience. He's one of the lowest levels of existence in this experience. And if that is intelligence, I beg to differ. So what I'm going to conclude here now is the attachment that I say needs to occur within our abilities, which has a long range, like the spectrum, and light is only a very small aspect of the spectrum. When you look at the vibrations that we're aware of is going on all around us, what we see is a very small spectrum. So intelligence is literally part of a spectrum, but as we experience and express it within this mystery, it raises us. It has the potential of raising us through our attachment to, with our attachment to. And what is it that we're attached to? Here, I'm going to go into this again. This is something, I suppose, it's so simple. It's an epiphany that I had in terms of my own life, in terms of my own appreciation of being alive. What is totally required for intelligence to actually have, I'll say, significance to anything or anyone, and you and me, does it exist, as I said, in a dysfunctional, psychotic? Yes, of course, it's represented, but it has no significance to you and me. Intelligence is only, it's what could I, and I'd like to find another analogy. I haven't reflected on this enough. That something exists and you can agree on it being a certain way, but it has no relevance to you and me because it doesn't matter. Like what I say in art, most of art now are idiosyncrasies and spectacle that has no significance to you and me in terms of getting ourselves into this feeling that allows us to raise ourselves. I suppose that's what I'm saying. Sounds a little confusing, but just bear with me. And what I'm going to say, to synopsize this, is that unless this ability in us, called intelligence, represents or expresses itself through an aspect which is much, much higher on the spectrum of intelligence. Let's say it's like this much, like the light spectrum is this much in an expanse of vibrations. The concept and the fact that we can exercise our, what I say, conscience, a part of us that is so committed and understands our contribution to this mystery, for lack of a better word, unless this small vibration called intelligence is activated within a very large spectrum of what I see as conscience. It's huge. Conscience is everything that I would consider to be, it's a cosmic reality. Conscience is not just within you and me. It is the perfection of this experience that if we look outside of ourselves and we see the symmetries and the patterns, and creation itself is full of this feeling of conscience, of the rightness of everything. Unless we incorporate this, we're lost, and we're going to be able to create weird, dysfunctional shit, and you can call it whatever the hell you want, but it's not intelligent. It's not intelligent. That's what I say. And I'll probably ruminate and reflect on this a little bit more because I'm not finished with it. It's like my feeling of having a romance with eternity. The idea that, you know, we associate ourselves with religious concepts and feelings and practices that give us a sense of this spirit moving within us. And I have this, don't know where it comes from, but literally, there is this love affair I have with the idea of eternity, which this is all part of intelligence, but without conscience, it has no significance to you and me. And to argue, yes, it exists, doesn't mean anything. So it exists as AI. You can call it whatever the hell you want, but it has no significance to you and me because it's not contributing to this experience in a way that we want this to unfold. Well, I'm talking about normal functioning people, not psychopaths who are running the joint. I'll stop it here.